Well, let's catch up with the economics editor of the Australian newspaper now, Adam Creighton. Now, Adam, if I've generally been a bit frustrated by the resistance of the teachers' union and schools to get back to full face-to-face learning, you're at the other end of the spectrum on this whole social distancing thing. You're sort of saying let it rip.
No, not really. I've never actually said that. I think some people characterise my...
Oh, right. That's a pithy summary.
I just think that we need to be moving a little faster, kind of getting back to normal than is currently scheduled. I mean, if you take the words of our leaders at face value, it's another 4 weeks of this, basically, before there's any sort of review. And certainly, I think in Victoria and New South Wales, there's zero evidence that the more extreme elements of the shutdown, the beach rule, the two-person rule, actually work. No one's saying do nothing. I think there should be social distancing measures kind of in place. But I think forcing the shutdown of so many businesses is just too large a pay, in my view.
Yeah, I think we've really got to be careful about the risk versus reward here, and I agree we've got to start lifting stuff. And another 3 weeks sounds a bit long. We've had funeral numbers, the number of mourners allowed at Queensland funerals doubled from 10 to 20. That's a little something. But the restrictions on crowds now in open places seems a bit over the top. We've got beaches starting to open under strict rules. What
really frustrates me too, just briefly on this issue, is you have this massive inconsistency that many stores are still able to be open in retail space, but it's not legal to go to them. I mean, the rules in New South Wales, at least, are clear. You can only be outside for essential reason. So that means, I presume, you can't go to Harvey Norman, you can't go to JB. I presume that is against the law. But JB Hi-Fi is allowed to be open. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, and I would have thought when we look at what has worked here, the critical fact was shutting our international borders and, of course, shutting pubs and restaurants. And one of the trickiest areas is going to be trying to open restaurants and pubs up again in some limited capacity. Presumably, business leaders, associations are looking very carefully at how they might be able to do that.
Yeah, looking quite understandably. I think our leaders have to be... have to be frank with people and just say, look, there may well be a modest spike in infections when we do start to lift these restrictions, but maybe we have to be prepared, to live with a slightly higher rate of infections. I mean, we all have different views on this. I think the idea that we can completely destroy this virus is a little bit ambitious and kind of naive. I think, sadly, it's with us now, and we kind of have to learn to live with it. And so I think the full eradication target, I think, is just not as realistic.
No, I think you're right. That can't happen. What we've got to do is learn to suppress the rate of infection, keep it relatively low, and open up our economy around it with extreme protection around places like aged care facilities, for instance.
Exactly. And the other interesting thing too in Australia at the moment that we're not doing is broader kind of antibody testing. These tests are a lot cheaper to conduct. They're just basically a pin prick at your finger, and you can find out right away whether or not you've ever had the virus before. These sorts of tests have been used in California and Europe. They've shown that a much bigger share of the population have actually had the virus at some past. And we don't seem to be doing that in Australia. We're just doing the more expensive test, which requires pathology, which actually says whether you have the virus right now or not. It doesn't say you had it in the past.
Yeah, indeed. That's going to be very important, that antibody testing. Just briefly, before we go, Adam, a lot of talk that out of the virus we might actually see some economic reform. All the things in taxation and workplace reform that were too hard in the past, they might have a crack out at this. Do you hold out much hope? And what do you think we should look out for?
Well, look, it's good that everyone's making the right sounds at the moment. Reserve Bank Governor, BCA, I think the Treasurer has said he'd like to take a look at cutting tax again. But look, I've got to say I'm pretty cynical about this, sadly. I think the track record is not great of reform over the past 6, 7, 8, 10 years. Not a great deal of good's happened on that front. I think Peter Costello made a good point in the Australian today, basically saying the government should certainly not change its personal income tax schedule and maybe even bring it forward. I think that's a good suggestion. I think on the IR front, there might be a little bit of promise maybe to simplify more, because effectively that's what's already happened, I understand. So the legislation around the JobKeeper payment has required changes to industrial relations law. So I hope perhaps down the track lead to some simplification. And in fact, that's something that below the RBA governor singled out.
I think, Adam Creighton, that when it comes to economic reform, we discovered the vaccine a long time ago. It's called the Australian Senate. We'll see what happens. Adam Creighton, thanks for joining us. He is the editor of The Australian. You can read his stuff in there 6 days a week. Always worth a read.